So, headed by Artūras Rumiancevas, enlarge your game dev with this one weird trick, this dev.
So to be honest, some of the builds right when we had a free slot. So a couple of days ago they asked if I can talk about anything, which I couldn't. So I thought that maybe I could share some of my experiences that I got in the last 6 to 9 months, or more general scope, maybe 12, couple of years. And that's business development. And that's one thing we kind of never talked in terms of game development, which never occurred to me either until I tried. And that's why I asked Florian to join, because he has, I think, slightly different experiences in comparison to all of us, since he's been doing that in Germany. And so the thing is that we used to talk about issues in game development. So first of all, we have to develop a game. That's mostly the main topic of all our gatherings, how to make a game, how to solve some problems while making it. Then, maybe 3-4 years back, we got a new topic, how to promote your game, how to do press kits, how to do PR, how to advertise, etc. And then at some point it's somehow switched to more technical topics, and I felt like, but when you talk to game developers themselves, everybody faces the same issue. There is no funds to develop a game. Everybody has an idea, has an artist, has a programmer, or could have if they just have some money. And nobody seems to have it. Especially if they want to do a game, a premium Steam game, which needs certain amount of funds to just make a proper demo to show it to publisher, and then you need to show it to publisher, and everybody here is usually convinced that we are not interesting to publishers, as you know, because we come with very little background. We don't have portfolios or deep traditions, or Lithuania is not really well recognized even on the European indie scene as a country which can make games. So, by some circumstance, I ended up working as business developer for 6 months or so. It wasn't a long period of time, but I visited several events. And the whole purpose of it for me was to basically go there, meet everyone I can, and see what I can bring back. So I tried to talk to some of the locals, what are they looking for, to kind of narrow my meetings down a little bit. But essentially, I managed to meet few people or companies that are already involved in business with locals as an effect of that. But the most priceless thing I learned is that, well, really, nobody really knows us there, but they are very fascinated to discover. Whenever you talk about Lithuania and try to explain the landscape, the amount of people in our game jams, show them our successful projects, financially successful or interesting otherwise, people are interested in that, and they value those connections. And I leave my card and I say, whatever you need in Lithuania, just let me know. I will try to find a person for you to just talk with him. And surprisingly, a lot of people write, and a lot of people ask additional questions. And that's when I figured that maybe that's one of the issues we have, that in our gaming studios we don't have designated people or designated accounts that would go out and try to solve problems. And having in mind that we are still small in many in many regards, no, that's not right.
Aspects.
In many aspects, yeah. Thanks. So we are kind of small in many aspects, but at the same time we don't know about a lot of opportunities just because we're not part of European or global movement. So you go to a meeting with a publisher, and then he's just interested to take some of your old titles and just reskin them with his characters, and relaunch it as a project which may basically earn you money. For example, like Zeptolab, a publisher, right? They are constantly looking for developers who have their games that have been launched already, but maybe not successful, and they would look at it and they would help with game design or other issues, and then they would give you characters and you would co-publish game with them. So maybe it doesn't give you a lot in terms of owning your IPs, but it gives you a lot in terms of experience, it gives you some revenues, it gives you a chance to work with people that we lack here, because we don't have, to be honest, we don't have a lot of experienced game designers in Lithuania. Again, in a very broad sense, because like most of our games doesn't require difficult game design, so to say. So if we want to do triple indie game, like an adventure game, platformer or something, we don't have people who have a lot of experience working on those. But there are a lot of people with this experience in Poland, in Hungary, in Romania, and they are looking for teams to work with. Essentially, one guy with a portfolio of several successful titles is going to events and meeting everyone, just looking for a team that he could either consult, either join, either just be hired for a project. So, and when I started to think of it, it kind of came up to me that, yeah, so maybe we could afford having business developers in our studios if we could, there are several options. Several studios can share one person, or another method, like the same person could be also responsible for other important things within the studio. Right? Business developer can be very efficient GDPR officer within your studio. Business developer can be very efficient in your public relations, because he will be building all those connections. And for example, in indie sector, a lot of attention comes basically on Twitter when your friends from other studios share your new game with their audiences. So, and that can happen through your business developer. And I think there are many other fields and areas where the same person could do several things. It's very important to have him in the team as a core member of the team, not as someone who would solve one specific problem, but an incremental person to the life of the studio, because that also includes outsourcing your work if you are in financial troubles. Business developer will help you find clients, or finding someone who will outsource their talents to you. And again, the business developer will find you some cheap guys from Slovenia who will maybe do some stuff for you just because they also want to learn or just want to be credited. So I think that we are really not active in that field, and I said, so maybe I will tell whatever I just told to kind of inspire this school of thought that we kind of need those people in our industry, in bigger studios and maybe free agents within the industry itself. And that's pretty much everything I have to say. And I think now maybe Florian can share some of his experiences. I'm to Florian, I don't know.
You should point it to me.
No, I pointed to you.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, which are probably quite a few here, I come from Germany and I worked at 2 different indie studios before coming here, working for Game On now. And I can only echo what Artūras just said. Those 2 companies had completely different approaches to business development. Company 1, in which I started, basically said, we are a development company, we want to do games. That's what they did. I left that company at some point because we had a successful title, but the follow-up title took too long in development. We didn't have any money to make in between work for hire, whatever else. So we got funding from EU projects, we got funding from German film funds, but in the end there was no revenue that came from the successful game before that could take us over to finish the next game. We did, but in the end basically people dispersed, started to do new things, and currently the studio is quite dormant, doing some smaller projects. Like under the hood of that studio, it's called Black Pants Games. Still, somebody might have played Tiny and Big. It was the first studio in Germany, first indie studio who was able to come to Steam without a publisher, which was also actually a sort of business development thing, because back in 2010, that I wasn't at the company back then, the guys went to Gamescom, went to the Valve stand, said, so can we talk to somebody here? And people looked at them and said, you're in luck, somebody just dropped out of an appointment, please meet guy X. They showed the game, Steam said, okay, this looks promising, you can publish on our platform. And that was the weirdest coincidence, because afterwards it was even before Greenlight. So that was good business development, but afterwards people became more involved with the projects, only wanting to develop, and that sort of went to sleep a little bit, and in the end there wasn't enough business in the company, because it tried to be a development studio, not a company. It was a game development team, but not a company, and the company needs business. The second company I worked in, completely different approach. Tweaks is the name of the studio. They had basically everybody on the team as a business developer. So what they said is, we are not, or some AAA studios have so many people in their company. They have programmers, graphics designers, whatever. And when I talk to them now for Game On to come to the event, some of them will say, please don't put me on Meet to Match. I'm not allowed to take any business meetings because the company doesn't want me to talk to people. I cannot contribute anything. I won't take any business meetings. I will give a talk about graphics or design or whatever, but I will not do that. They don't need that. They have people in the studio who do that. We were, or still are, a team of currently, I think, 12 people there. And every programmer, everybody who represented the company at an event was told before, this is the guidelines of what you can talk about, our current situation, this is what you cannot talk about. Like there are some things that are under NDA. This is how you should talk about the game when you meet people. This is our current project. This is how you approach people. You are always free to talk as long as you follow these guidelines. And programmers brought us business contacts because they felt confident that they knew about what the company is doing right now. They represented the company in a good way because they were out there talking about the cool things they are doing and being able to say, yes, of course, I can bring you in contact with someone at the studio. They can talk to you about this, this, and this. This is what's going on. We have 3 projects running right now. 2 of them I cannot talk to you about, but this one I am working on right now, and so on. So that company also did very interesting things, branching out, because they found out that maybe as a small indie studio, it is not only viable to make games, but we need to think out of the box. So they came together with other developers and created a booth at Gamescom, which is called Indie Arena booth. It started out with 8 companies in the first year and was now in the 6th year. Last year I was the press contact for that booth, doing all the meetings, showing politicians around, showing press around the booth, showing it off. And it was the first year 30 square meters. Last year it had 1,000 square meters. 27 countries were represented in that booth. 80 games, live streaming throughout the event. And it was all just people in their own studios making their own games, in their free time, coming together as a collective, creating this booth. For the first 5 years, not even taking revenue out of that. So what they understood is that we need business. It is a crazy kind of thing to do business like that, but it still brought so many contracts, it brought so many contacts, it brought so much attention to that project, and you can always take something out of that for your own company, because you run this big ass booth, you know developers from all over the world, and you can always find someone who will be able to share a contact. A publisher wants to come to that booth and say, I can meet all the best indies of Gamescom at that booth, and you run that booth, right? Cool. So, business development is something that is definable by what your company wants to do and achieve, but something you should always think about and you shouldn't neglect. Just find out what works for yourself, for your company, what you can offer, and then go out and meet people, because stuff might fall through. You might follow up with people 10 times and nothing comes of it, but that one connection just might give you your next contract or connect you with a publisher, or like, you never know. Go out, meet people.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that in mobile area also it's very important. I had this experience as well while working a little bit with Pepe Play, but essentially I was tasked with business development role there, and well, we didn't call it that. We didn't know what it means. They asked me to help with PR, but I ended up talking directly to Apple and Google about, like, product and featuring possibilities, which is one step towards business development from PR. But like the interesting point here is that if you are familiar with Pepe Play, you know that they have very high standards of ethics in approach towards monetization, because it's games for kids. So they used to be premium only, which was great on Apple platforms and not as great on Google platforms. So eventually Google approached us with a question, how can we start the dialogue of you going into freemium? Because that would be great for both companies, for us and for Google. And eventually all of this PR transformed into pure business development, because I was the one talking with Google and trying to convince Pepe here at home, listening to both sides' problems, trying to make sense out of it, while eventually we found a new business model that Google liked and we liked, and it really gave a big boost in the life of the studio, like in the life cycle of the studio, because the revenues from Google started picked up and started to grow, which allowed more programmers, more people at the studio, and eventually, hopefully, more products released per year. So, but I think you can add here, from your perspective, especially in mobile and...
Yeah, so my name is Joseph. I'm from Tiny Lab Productions. Our company was quite a rare breed. We were one of the first ones that actually approached the kids game market. Back in 2012, we developed a game called Funky Racing and published it to the Google Play Store. Everything what happened afterwards was a great success. We developed a few follow-up games, and from that we established ourselves not only as a kids game developer, but also a kids game publisher. We published all of our games by ourselves. So being in such a company for me as a biz dev is a fantastic thing, because we can have people that are purely dedicated to business development, that are completely working on that. I'm not sure if you know our story, but I can give you a short intro. We essentially started a few games, and then started developing more games based on the same side-scroller kid game type. and added functions, continued to cross-promote the games in between them, and successfully grew to over 150 million downloads by last month. So last month we launched the 100th game, and everything was kind of successful, and then Google dropped in with COPPA compliances and then a huge lawsuit you can read about in the NYT. So, but essentially about business development. So business development is a really broad topic for indie folks. For us, we've tried everything. We tried work for hire. We actually have Indian and other foreign publishers that work with us on certain IPs. We did IP-based games. We were usual people at the London BLE conference, which is a licensing conference for IPs. We worked on a multitude of things, and just forefront, I can tell you if you need any information about how to do business or any kinds of help with that, just give us a shout out. We'll be really happy to help out with ad monetization or whatever. So what I wanted to say is that it's an interesting thing to hear how business developers have to work on multiple grounds. And I think it's, in one way, it's a really positive thing for the business developer and for the whole business, because you can get a really broad view and new opportunities on the table, like the indie game booth you mentioned. But on the other side, I would hope that, for example, the government of Lithuania would actually act in as such a booth organizer, because we have so many potential game developers here, and this industry will be growing substantially. The monetization opportunities will grow substantially. Just to illustrate that, right now, around 18% of the total video advertising budget is spent on mobile for kids advertising. The 82% is spent on TV. And this is constantly moving to the game industry. So, and this is essentially happening through the whole categories, not only casual games, kids games, etc. So this is a growing thing, and we should embrace this growing market here in Lithuania. So I would urge you to maybe contact your local officials, I don't know. Let's do a clusterized approach towards Versli Lietuva to help us develop this thing. Because this is essentially a really good, healthy market. We could all work together and do something like you guys did. We could help out each other. We have experience already. I wouldn't say we have a small experienced team, but for example, our approach was so deep, we could definitely consult many companies. Based on Tiny Lab Productions, we have ad networks such as Super Awesome growing, Kiddos growing. These are kids ad networks that don't collect any data but have their tools how to provide ads. And they're global players with huge shares. So we already have the experience. We have people from Tutatunes. We have Nerd Current here. We have Sneaky Box, which work on the other side, let's say. But essentially, we already have the expertise. We just need to probably cooperate it and help the smaller ones. That's what I'm thinking. I'm just thinking that this is already an opportunity. We don't have to stand in one place and wait for some miracle. Let's just do that.
Cool. Mikey. Oh, so yeah, I think that's essentially it. I'm really glad that you both joined me, because now people can ask you questions from here, or just let's go for some tea and coffee and talk to those guys if you need some help.
Yeah, I sort of have a, how should I say, expansion to this. I don't know. How should I say? Well, last year when I was studying at Finland, I knew I learned about their. Sorry, I'm a bit nervous.
It's okay.
I learned about a bit their gaming development studio, how they do work. In the city Turku, they have a corporate organization called Hive, and this organization helps smaller studios grow out, like with funding, with space, with electricity, like the tech. And then after, if the project is successful, they give like 2 years, as I remember, 2 years to pay back the loan, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So maybe we can do something around here.
I think that BGI is right now working on that issue. There is a European project, Vault Games Industries, called BGI. So essentially they are right now in a research phase of the whole project, but eventually, and I just heard the rumor that, so eventually every country in the Baltic Sea region, so that not only Baltics, it's like the Baltic Sea basin countries, every country will open its own incubators based on the findings of this research phase. I assume the methods will vary from country to country based on what they already have. Like Sweden and Finland are really well developed in that field. For example, Poland has a lot of independent clusters who are right now trying to open up their own incubators. But for Lithuania, I just heard that there is an idea to have also an incubator with several million in funding, specifically for young studios to kick off. So that would include stuff you've mentioned, maybe not funding, direct funding with money, but maybe offices, electricity, contacts, advisory board, etc. And maybe in that regard also meetings with potential investors or publishers. So because I believe every team should, we just went to that investor forum, which was very baffling experience for me. Because whenever we talk about investment in games, it's usually, we take an industry which is very unique in many ways, and we take the practice which is catered essentially to buy and sell companies. What the investment essentially is, either you invest into a company for its growth to get funds back, either you invest into a company because you are looking to sell it at some point when it's bigger. So, and it doesn't work for games because in most cases, nobody wants to sell the studio or give shares. People just want money for a specific project. They may work on 2 of those, and they want to share revenues from that project. So investors are also forced to rethink other models of investment into games. And then I thought, but there are publishers, like investors of the video game world. And we had issues with publishing business 10 years back when it was more similar to Hollywood. So we have like 5 top names, and that's where the world begins and ends. But it's not like this right now. Like Poland has, I don't know, 15, 20 publishers and new ones opening up every day. And all of them want games. It's just a matter of finding the one which has the resources you need. Because one game may need funds. Another game may need, as I said, experts in some specific fields. Another game may just need funds for active promo campaigns. So maybe the publisher doesn't invest into you directly, they just run your ads for you. So, but in order to know all of them, in order to find all of those opportunities, you need a guy in your company who spends his time on that stuff. You know, traveling events and trying to solve problems, you know, within the networks. Because there are networks, other networks that help a lot. My experience with learning Baltic Nordic is super great. Whenever I need anything, I can write them and they help. And the same is with Google, actually. Of course, there was 100 emails to Google we never replied. But the 101st they replied, and from that point it's just normal communication.
Lucky you.
Well, I guess in my case I was lucky because of the product. Like Google was interested in that more than into talking to me, but eventually that happened. But the thing is that nobody within the studio could afford themselves to write that 100 emails without response. So they needed someone else to help them with that. And so the PR manager did that. You know, so that's how we figured that perhaps we should focus less on PR in our area and more on talking to potential partners like Super Awesome we mentioned. We also discovered that network, which was very good match for things we wanted to do, and we discovered it through Google because we just asked them, like, okay, so we want to run, maybe we will run ads in our games, but we want, you know, like ethical, high standard service to do that. And we said, like, that's the list of ad services we approve to be safe to use in games for kids. So one email saved me hundreds of hours of research, and it's just because I had that contact, because I had time to write that kind of emails. That's I think the whole point.
And about those hundreds emails, they will still stay, and they will still be 100 emails with no reply. But as soon as you start meeting people in person and then writing emails, the amount of people who answer to you gets exponentially bigger.
Yeah,
So
because
personal connection is.
I wrote you 100 times, and then he must reply.
Just an example. It is not a complete example because nothing came of it in the end, sadly. I visited a conference, went in Germany, went through the speakers list, and the guy spoke there who was back then Google Apps Europe head of, basically. Philip is his name, von Bieberstein, whatever. So he had a talk there just presenting to a business audience about ads in games. Back then my studio didn't do any ads in games, we didn't want to. So I just waited for him to end his talk, took my phone and said, so this is the game we're working on, it will be released on your store in 2 months. Do you think we can get a feature? He was like, what? Why would you, like, look at the game, do you have 5 minutes, can you take the time? He looked at it, he liked it, he played it, he didn't put it down immediately. I said, can you give me your email address? I would like to follow up. So he gave me his email address, which at Google is quite easy actually, because it's just Philip at Google. He doesn't work there anymore, so you can try this one. But still, I followed up after the event saying, hey, so remember I showed you this game. You said you liked it. Will you share it with a colleague? Like, do you think this works for the App Store to get a feature? Because we knew if we get a feature, then we will have more sales. He said I will get back to you, so he replied. I needed to follow up again, saying, hey Philip, how's it going? It's been 2 weeks. Do you think this will work? He said, okay, I tried. Like, I talked to the people, the monetization you're looking at, it doesn't work. For what we are looking at currently, it won't be featured. In the end, this didn't lead to much, but still, like, knowing the head of Google App Store Europe, just by going to them, talking to them, saying, this is my game, will you look at it? You have 5 minutes attention of that person and 2 follow-up emails. This is like everybody else who tries it without meeting the guy in person finds the email address somewhere, gets it from shared whatever, will never get a reply.
Well, actually, when you mentioned it, I remember. So, during my last few conferences, I've met a lot of people which are, even simpler for countries like us to approach. Because, for example, Kate Edwards right now she works for Geography, but she used to be the head of International Game Development Association. So her grandmother is Lithuanian. She moved from Lithuania in between the wars to Chicago or Seattle. And so Kate kind of knows that she is Lithuanian. She's never been here. So it's easy to talk to her about events and stuff because she wants to come. You just need a reason and a free window in the calendar, but I'm assured that in many ways it would be much easier for us to have her here just because of this. Then I met an investor from London Venture Partners. The guys are into serious investment, but they can take a personal look at your project because the guy's fiance is from Ukmergė. So he comes to his future mother-in-law twice or 3 times a year. And there are many others like this who has some sort of connection to Lithuania. People that you would think would never talk to you. You just send an invite to me and they accept it. And you go in a thrill, why did he accept it? And it's I just noticed that you're from Lithuania and my brother has a wife, Lithuanian wife, and so, I visit the country, I like the country, but I never knew that you have anything in games development, so show me what you have, tell me your story, and we listen to it. And then after in one of the meetings I met a guy, and he was so where are you from? Lithuania. He said, cool, I know Lithuania, there is this cool company called the Volgamus. I said, they are not the Volgamus anymore, it's called North Current now. He said, well, that's cool, how are they faring? I told him a little bit, and he said that, well, I was the guy that brought Activision to them back in the 90s, when it was almost unmanageable. And I said, well, maybe you would like to bring some, more of Activision to some other guys. And there is a studio in Lithuania right now working with the guy. They hired him as their business development consultant or an advisor. But, so those things happen. So I went without a plan, without a schedule. One thing I did, I went to Meet to Match system, and I just tried, I talked to Ledai, I talked to some other guys, what are you doing, just to have a broad sense of things. So I didn't even have an agenda or a goal. And even though I could bring back dozens of contacts and half of them are workable in some regard. So that's when I kind of felt this surge of belief that this may work, because not a lot of studios have it in Lithuania. Like a person dedicated to just going out, meeting people, looking for new opportunities, and and that's it, I think.
This led on to a really good follow-up, but just to synthesize what those two had in mind, is that essentially you have to split the financing out and leave it to publishing deals. Find a big publisher that would help you to finance your game. The other thing that you actually need is know-how, and know who, I should say. So what happened to Tiny Labs? Back in 2012, we were invited to join, we were invited to go to Tallinn and join the Game Founders, it's an incubator, yeah, thank you, that's the word. So essentially what happened, our CEO, our CDO, and our main artist, they all immediately knew who are creative mobile. They went with the ferry to Finland, to Helsinki, and had dev parties that were provided by Supercell. They had really great time meeting all of the people, so they had to know who. And the know who helps a lot. You can have so many connections. You know about the industry, so it's a great thing. The other thing is know how. They had extensive training on how to develop, how to monetize your game, how to approach a publisher, how to approach an investor. And later on, if you're a successful person with whatever you're developing, you can actually get financing from them of some sort. They could take like 10% of their company, of your company, and help out throughout all of the way. So call game founders at this moment. And if Telesoftas and the guys here will continue to do these game dev meetups, we'll probably have something like that here. That's essentially what I was talking about when I said we need some clusterized thing here. That's essentially what we would need. But what we need also is to have a lot of mentors, a lot of connections, to bring in people you guys know, to help out all of the industry people here. And this essentially can strive easily. So call game founders. I think that will help.
Sure.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
Should I say that?
Yeah, I was just,
It's a unified
do the
voice.
plug and let's go.
Come to Game On. We will have many international visitors being there as speakers, joining me to match, meet people, talk to them, do business.
Free advice. Check out who is coming to Game On. You know how Florian looks, or how I look, and we can do introductions. I can do with maybe 75%, and Florian with the whole 100. So, if you have troubles approaching a person, there is always someone at Game On that will help you to do that. So have this in mind, because that I can tell from experience that happens rarely. We have high-profile people like investors from Wargaming or someone, and they leave Lithuania, and in a couple of weeks they write to me that you guys are super weird. I asked why. He said, like, because I spent the day, and half of it was kind of boring because I didn't have anyone to talk to. So I spent 2 days at Game On, and one of them was kind of boring. And then I go back to my work, and like week after the event, I start to get emails from Lithuanian guys saying that, yeah, we heard that you were at Game On, we want to show you our game. Why not them? Well, because they couldn't find you, or they were maybe, too frustrated to approach. Maybe they are very young or something else. So, but really, just a couple of people asked for personal introductions during the show last year. Although we had something like around 50 developers from Lithuania and pretty much a similar amount of guests at the show. So having just 3 or 4 requests kind of helped me to approach this or that guy was kind of weird. This should stop. You should go out and talk and ask for help. That's what we have helped with.
People are friendly.
Yeah.
Essentially,
especially in this
everyone's
industry.
really friendly in this industry.
Yes.
Crazy, but that's true.
And if they have a beer, then they're 100% more open to talk and even more friendly.
Well, let's thank these friendly people: Artūras Rumiancevas, Florian Masuth, and Juozapas Preikša, right? Preikša. Sorry about earlier.
Sorry.
Yeah. So, round of applause.